I'm gonna hit got it. And that should be on your page now. So let me see if I can find it.
And
Excellent, it is.
Oh, it's public too. Perfect.
See, small miracles.
Gonna share this just into the Radiant Evolution Collective as well. And all right, we're good to go.
And just make sure that it got shared properly on my page.
Yes.
Yep, it is. All right, cool. So I'll close that and that and that. Excellent. All right, I'm all yours.
Amazing. That's exciting to be here live with you. Jason, thank you so much for joining me. So for anyone watching, I'm Aurora Light. This is Jason Estes, and we are going to be talking today about conscious creation. This gentleman is one of the most stunning examples of what that looks like in motion. He embodies the essence of consciously creating on purpose, with as much of the consciousness as he can bring through, and actually being the change that we want to see in the world. So I really am so happy that you're here, Jason. The last time we spoke, for anyone that missed it, was actually at the Soul Embodiment Summit last year. And I invited Jason to speak at that again. It's happening in 2 weeks. And he wasn't able to, but we are here now together, which feels like it's something even better because we get to kind of set the tone and talk about what conscious creation means, to just infuse the energy in the equinox portal with all of that juiciness. So thanks again.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for understanding. Having the first member meetup is a very big deal for us at MTVO, finally to have the ability to bring people here, even with what's going on in the world, and to just really sit down and figure out what it's like to be in person, because many people haven't met each other in real life. It's one of those things that I'm really looking forward to, is that opportunity to just see like what happens. Because our theme is choose your own adventure. That's the theme. So it's 62 acres of land in a 13th dimensional reality with some of the most amazing people in the world, all just showing up to see what happens next. And we all know that. So I'm very much looking forward to it. I think it's gonna be a lot of fun. So thank you for understanding and doing this a little bit early with me. And I'm honored to be part of this again. Even though I'm not technically part of that, I'm still part of it because, you know, it's just how the world works. So thank you.
Oh, no, thank you. It honestly is going to be, like I said, even better. And I am going to, if you're okay with it, just like peek in energetically to your meetup and just like look down and see it sparkling while we're doing our summit.
Yeah, you can
all dance together.
Yeah, it's gonna be really fun. It'll be like its own little way of playing and celebrating. Honestly, it's a huge celebration that time, because after the 18th, we're like done with the smoke grenade that's caused all the problems in the world. Like all this was supposed to happen in 2020 in January. It was gonna be great. Everything was gonna get cleared up really fast. The chaos timeline integration had some other things up its sleeve, and we finally, after almost a whole extra year, cleaned up all of that. And it's really fun because we were talking about this before we went live, but like everyone I know is like, wow, we're like literally a year behind. Everything that I had planned, we're a year behind. Everything you've planned, a year behind. It's just this like whole thing where it's like, well, if we're all a year behind, then, you know, like you said, we're on time. And the fact that we made it is what matters. So to me, it's like, it doesn't matter that we're a year behind, because when we finally actually complete it, it won't matter how long it took. It'll just matter that we did it, right? And so that's what's so cool about the event that you're doing, and the time that you're choosing is like, that is the beginning of the next chapter. Like we're in the reckoning right now, which is the balancing of the scales. One thing that they chose to do was create like a bubble with like our most important contracts and keep it inside of it. So the way that works is like, if you can only fulfill part of your mission, then you can't complete it. And you can't complete it because certain parts of it are held outside of time in a bubble that they shouldn't exist in, through basically a loophole, right? So what happens is then you like complete everything. You're like, wow, we cleaned up everything. That was actually not as bad as I thought. I mean, you know, it was pretty bad, but we're here. We're here now. We're stable. And then it's like, but wait, why don't I feel complete? What's going on? Oh, how did you guys do that? And so then like the whole reality reframing and changing things to get to where we are now. But now we're finally there. The contracts are available. We're going to complete them, and that will be the end. And so then the next stage begins. which is really cool because the reckoning is about balancing of the scales. And balancing the scales of karma is one of the most important things we can ever do, because it means that we are where we need to be. It doesn't, karma, people are always like, oh, karma is bad and evil and all this other stuff. It's like, no, karma is natural effort, natural force moving us in a direction that we need to be moved in so that we can be free. So if you withhold certain parts of that lesson, certain consequences from certain organizations and groups, what happens? You get a world that's imbalanced and you get extremes. But if you actually have things in natural order, what happens is you learn from your mistakes and you grow and you evolve. It's the same thing as like the whole spiritual movement when it got hijacked and became an illusionary spiritual movement for many people. And spiritual escapism became meditation. And that process led to all these problems because people were like, oh, I'm living my life. And you're like, no, you're not. You haven't done anything with your life for years. You just go to festival after festival after festival after festival after festival. You don't know how to live anymore. You forgot. That's the opposite of being real. That's the opposite of consciously creating. That's the illusion of conscious creation. And that's what happened on this planet for a really long time until it got broken. And that was one of the good things about 2020 was no one could do anything that they were used to. And so they had to be real. They had to sit and be like, I'm going to be real now. And I don't even know what that's like. And I'm afraid because, and then they had to feel. And then there was all these other things that happened around that. So it's a great time of celebration for the world as we finally begin to move through that. That being said, there's going to be some very hard moments coming forward. Like, honestly, I think that between now and the 21st, some major events are going to unfold on the planet that are going to lead most of us to feel a very deep level of heartbrokenness. But it's going to break the places that need to be broken so that we can see clearly again. And I think that that's the important thing to look at is like, whatever happens, just know that it's part of something that needs to happen. And that once it's done, there will be reason and it will make sense eventually. It's just going to take some time for us to look around. The way that I see it in my visions is a fog of war is going to fall upon us. And when that happens, we're going to dissipate it really fast because we'll be able to see. But the problem is that at first, it's going to be like some people are just going to give up. They're not going to know how to move in that fog of war because they're not used to it. They've never experienced it before. But the rebalancing is no small task. To be able to move things back to the way they need to be, there's a lot of things that will take place on this planet that aren't going to be easy for people to handle.
Yeah, absolutely. Feeling into the energy of September, that is where I was feeling that we need to be really focusing on our own internal everything and disengage if we're falling out of balance with this, so that we can create the stability and the foundation that we're going to need to be able to rebuild. After that 18th, towards that equinox time, we get to have the opportunity to finally start to create and build without all of those restraints.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I feel like that's the main thing to understand is like, this is not necessarily a cave mode, so to speak, because there are going to be people that have been living in balance as best they could already. And yeah, that little piece is going to hit them. They're going to be like, oh, okay. And then they're going to come back to balance and move forward. But there are going to be some people that piece hits them and then it knocks them straight out. And for those people, there's nothing wrong with taking time and laying in bed and resting and really allowing your body to process what it needs to process, because this is a very strong time. But this is one of those last pushes, because on the other side of this, all of this amazing technology starts coming out. All of these amazing people start to come to the scenes. We have the whole walk-in thing happening. The elders are back. Like, all of these things are coming together in this most brilliant, perfect thing. And then on the side of that, there's a descent reality, right? Because it has to descend in so that ascent can occur. So one group will go down over the cliff and the other one will raise above it and turn at the last moment. And it will be that moment that literally breaks the two into one and allows it to go forward, right? That's always happened every time there's an end time madness event. It always occurs this way. One group begins to go insane and the other group begins to awaken to who they truly are. Now, if you think about this from like a normal perspective, you think about like human beings as light sources. So when we begin to honor our divinity and we begin to shine, right, what happens is that shine begins to echo through time. And as it echoes through time, the people who are not shining become shadows. And this is the ascent to descent. And it happens every time there's a dimensional veil that is uncovered and a new level of consciousness is created. It happens. So what we're about to experience is just going to be that, right? Like, it's just gonna be like, okay, cool. So I'm choosing to shine. That's going to piss off a lot of people. That's okay. That's them going through their emotions. And some of them are going to be like, hey, thank you for pissing me off. I'm grateful for that. I now can see things that I didn't see. I didn't know I had so much resentment in my heart, right? Because they don't know that they don't know. And I'm not saying that I know better than them, because I only know me. And that's a very important piece to understand moving forward too, is like, I only know me. If you can remember that, then you're going to have a lot more fun on this ride. If you think you know Bob, be prepared for Bob to show you that you don't know Bob. That's the best way I can describe what's about to come.
I love that, because I have both a brother and a father named Bob. So
there you go. Congratulations. I actually have yet to meet a Bob.
Oh,
which is why I use Bob, yeah. Or Jane. I haven't met a Jane yet either, which is why I use Jane when I'm referring to female.
they're out there. So
They exist.
Yeah, they're out there for sure. And good people, wonderful people.
Yeah.
But I do think that some people are going to have gotten hung up on the fact that you said some people are going to go insane and fall off the cliff. So if you're able to let people know what to expect from that, or perhaps assuage any fear that comes up when they hear that phrase.
Yeah, well, falling off the cliff doesn't mean that it's over, right? Like, it's not like you're going to fall off the cliff and die. There's an opportunity when you fall off the cliff to fly. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? Like, also, some people, that's their end point. They actually chose to end there, which isn't a big deal. If you're conscious right now and you're able to watch this, or you're able to make decisions where you actually have critical thinking capabilities, you're prepared for the next dimension. Congratulations. If you don't know how to critically think, meaning that you have to follow somebody else's structure, you're not really going to be ready for what comes next, because this is us taking full responsibility and accountability, which means if I want to write a story, I can write a story. People can play with that story, but whatever happens in that story, I'm responsible for as the writer, right? There's a lot of people who can't handle that idea. They literally just cannot fathom the idea of them creating a reality for themselves that others come to play in and be responsible for everyone that plays in that. And that's the kind of the struggle that's going to happen. In Time Madness, though, it sounds scary, but it's really not. What it is the energy ramps up and our consciousness goes into hiding, or it expands into its true potential every single time. And you can look back at, like, the time of Noah was the last time they had one of these major things. There was this group of beings that went into cannibalism because they couldn't handle things. And there was another group of beings who went into fate, and they began to build a giant boat, so to speak, right? And all the things that needed to happen, an arc of consciousness. Well, that's the same thing that's happening now, except it's more of like an invisible thing with a light rain that's happening. And when I say light, I mean like light as in like shining light, not like light as in very little, because it's a very, very strong rain. The amount of energy that's coming in right now, we've never experienced it before. I mean, there's literal days where I'm like, and now it's nap time for 5 seconds, because the energy gets so high that you have to just close your eyes and just let the energy run through. And that brings me to one of the more important things, is just know that meditation is like kind of an imperative thing now. If you don't know what I'm talking about, figure out how to close your eyes and just be in that space. Don't necessarily listen to other people on how to meditate, because you have your own style, and figure that out and you're going to be good to go.
I've been finding that as well, where I will feel like I am almost like being crushed by the light, by the information that's coming in. And I get real cranky if I don't take that time to just lay down, integrate, receive the activations. And sometimes it does only take 5 minutes. Sometimes it's a half an hour, but afterwards I feel amazing. So we need to gift ourselves the opportunities when we're feeling that to have the integration time. Otherwise, you wind up, I think, in my experience, just basically almost like crumbling under it.
Yeah, you can't, there's no way that anyone on this planet can hold up against the light that's coming down anymore. It's designed that way on purpose. So if and people are like, well, but I work, so I'm in an office. It's like, well, the bathroom is your friend. Just go get into the bathroom, go sit in the stall that you need to sit in, and just like be like, oh, and then be done with it, you know? Like it just, the energy's gonna run through you. You're gonna get to choose how you choose to let that happen. It is gonna happen though. I mean, no matter what, you're just be prepared, because you're gonna have one of those moments that you just have to lay down for, or sit up, or like close your eyes and just like be in it. Because that's part of this process, is like, can I create my life so perfectly that I have those spaces and I know how to use those spaces? Can I be okay with this much information flowing through me? Can I surrender, right? Because one of the biggest things is like, well, Jason, I don't want to go to the bathroom because then somebody's going to think I have a weak bladder. You're not choosing you. You're choosing other people's point of view of you. So be aware of that. Yeah, it might dock you a little bit of pay because you're in the bathroom like every few hours. It doesn't matter, right? Like it's a thing that will only happen temporarily. Once you've run the current through you though, it doesn't happen again at that intensity for a while, because things have to build back up before it's like, oh, you're not processing properly. We've got to turn you offline for a second, let the energy run through, and then you're back online. And that's what laying down and sleeping really is.
And I feel like sometimes we fight that because the surrender piece is scary, right?
Oh yeah, it's really scary because you're going to learn things about yourself you don't know. But that's why I say activate bravery. Like, just be willing to acknowledge that what's going to happen is you're going to learn things you didn't know about yourself. Sometimes those things are going to be about other lifetimes where you did things that you can't even think about. Well, congratulations, you're an infinite being. You've done everything that can be done ever. So you're going to get to process that someday. Does that mean that it was bad or wrong or evil? No, some of it is literally just hypotheticals that are lost in the metaphor of time that you're processing. It's not a big deal what you've done in other lives. This is the one warning I'll give people, because what I've seen is people going into it and being like, oh, I was a mass murderer in another life. And it's like, okay, cool, congratulations. They're like, why? I'm like, you're not one in this life, right? Just checking though, like, you're not a mass murderer, right? Okay, cool. So why do you think you're a mass murderer? Why do you think you should be punished right now? I'm like, because I was in another life. I'm like, I've been everything too. Congratulations. Thank you for not choosing that right now. And that's an important thing, is like, it's okay to have been everything under the sun, because that's part of our journey into who we are. Now, if you're a mass murderer today, and not saying that that's wrong, just for the record out there, I personally don't want to be your friend, but that's okay. You've got people out there that will be your friend, I'm sure. There is hope for all of us. Redemption is available to anyone that is still alive. And this brings up some pretty painful topics for people, because like, well, what about all the people who've done all the horrific things on this planet? I'm like, yeah, they're redeemable. We don't know. I don't know their life. I don't know their journey. I don't know how they got there. I just know they're redeemable if they're still here. Once redemption ends, on November 28th, then I won't know for sure, but I'm pretty sure. No certainty, obviously, but pretty sure that at that time, that's when things are going to get really nice on this planet. Because as we transition into the year of discovery, we're going to understand more about why we did what we did, and why we took the actions we took, and all the things. And that's going to be really helpful for us, because right now it's more like faith. Like, we're here, we're learning these things. We don't know what we're learning. We're seeing things, we're learning things, seeing things, learning things. This whole pattern, right? Seeing things, learning things, right? But then in discovery, it's like, oh, this is why we're seeing things and learning things. And redemption is more about faith. It's like, can I come into belief in myself enough that I can have faith that there's something going on that I can't see? And that's like, have I done everything that I can do in my power to be real? Have I done everything in my power to be good? Have I done everything in my power to simply be? Yes. Okay, cool. Then I don't care what's going on around me, because everything that's going on around me isn't in front of me. Only thing in front of me is, am I being those things? If I'm not being those things, then there's something I need to alter or change, right? And that's okay, because it's in my world that I can handle. If we all did that, we would clean up this whole problem on the planet within like minutes, probably even sooner. But we can't all do that, because there is a separation occurring between the ascent and descent realities. Like, it has to happen so that we can make room for the next dimension, for that new way of understanding and seeing the world.
I've definitely been hearing a lot of people feeling overwhelmed by the things that are happening around them right now, right? They're trying to process somebody else's stuff. They're trying to empathize with other people and take on some of that emotionally and basically filter for them. I
Well, I
believe.
mean, that's more pity than empathy.
Yeah, see, sometimes I think, and there's also, I find this old program that people run from maybe other lifetimes or maybe just what they've been taught, that if they don't feel something with someone, then, or for them, or try to take some of it on for them, then they're a bad person.
Yep, that's the number one thing that's taught to us, to make sure that we don't succeed.
Right? Yeah, just
never solve another person's problem, because if you do, you've created a bigger problem for them and for you. Just remember that, and you'll do much better in life. Does that mean that you don't need to help people from time to time? No, if they're in front of you to support, that's because there's a lesson for you and them in that exchange. So you support them, and whatever occurs, you process your side of it. It's really simple. People are like, well, but that's not being human, blah, 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 blah. No, that is being human. Human is, I understand that there's only so much I can do. And stressing out about things that I can't do doesn't help me or you. It only makes both me and you more annoyed, because I annoy you about the thing that I can't solve, and you annoy me about the fact that I'm annoying you. That doesn't help either of us. So instead, let's just handle what's in front of us and get to the end together. That's the most human trait that you'll ever have. And that's why I call it team humanity, is because if you handle what's in front of you, it shows others they can handle what's in front of them. That shows others they can handle what's in front of them. And then all of a sudden, we're handling everything that's in front of us as a team, and humanity ascends instantly. It's so fast, right? And that, again, for people that don't know me, when I say ascend, I'm not saying that we get to this next layer and that's the end. It's not, it's an infinite game, right? So we're always ascending, but the next layer of dimensionality is really close. Like we're really close. Some people are even already on the other side of it, looking down, going, holy crap, this is so different. And then they come back here and they're like, whew, okay, well, this is where we're headed. So everybody just be aware that you're doing it perfectly. Just keep doing what's in front of you. You've got this, right? Because they're going to pop up sometimes into the next dimension and be like, okay, that's interesting. And then come back, be like, okay, what's in front of me right now? Because it's the only way you're going to get there. I don't know anyone on this planet who's ever going to get to the next dimension not handling what's in front of them. Because if you handle what's beside you, you're taking from somebody else that needs that lesson. And now you're just derailing yourself and someone else. So if it's not in front of you, don't do it. It's that simple. I've been trying to teach this for about 3 years, and that's what it boils down to. Very, very basic stuff. If it's not in front of you, don't do it.
It glitches out your mind. And I love that phrase more than anything. You were the first person to say it in that way. And I say to myself all the time, to all my clients and students, it's what is right in front of you. Because people will get stuck when they're saying, there's this huge ladder and I've got this huge goal and I've got this thing that I want to create and it's over here. And I don't know which step to take first. So I'm overwhelmed and I'm stuck. And it's, well, you take the step that's right in front of you, the first step, right? And then the next step. And so often people are looking ahead because they've got that vision, they've got that dream, they've got the download of what it's going to be, and they don't know how to get there. But this is the path, this is the way.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of that has to do with the futuring aspect, like where we're taught that we should future, we should like create these goals and these visions and all this stuff. And I think that that's fine, right? Like that makes sense. But then you have to also live. And that's the struggle that people don't get. Like, I'm actually going to be doing a video on Wealth series probably sometime this week or next week. That's going to be the last one of level 1. And that's what it is. It's like, okay, so you have this great vision, but that doesn't mean anything because you still have to walk through the valley to get to the next peak of where you think you're going to go. So how do you prepare for that? And that's the struggle that I think a lot of people don't really apply, is like, we're not designed to live on top of the mountain. If we ever live on top of the mountain forever, then we've missed the point of life. The mountain is the point of view or the perspective that we look into the valley to understand where we go next. So we visit the mountain for clarity, and then we come back into reality to process that clarity. But what happened was, like, we had all these festivals and all these other things. And so these teachers, or what we considered examples, became examples of escapism. And over hundreds of years, these experiences led to the separation of the capability and the will of humanity. And we began to think that the key is to get to the top of the mountain, and that once we're at the top of the mountain, everything makes sense. No, I can tell you, I've been to many a top of mountains. All it is a great view and a wonderful opportunity to learn the climb. That's really it. Like, the climb is where you learn who you are as a person, where you test the perseverance, the capabilities, all the things. You're in a perpetual climb with moments of mountaintops. But that's not a bad thing. Think of all the amazing views and the amazing opportunities and moments that you're going to get on that journey. And one thing is, like, if you look at nature, this is something that's really cool about nature. Living on the mountaintop is not sustainable. And nature even teaches you that. Everything you need, the water, the streams, everything comes into the valley. So, like, why is it that we believe other than nature? Well, that's because we were taught to live outside of nature. We built these houses, we did all this work specifically to make sure that we didn't have to take responsibility for nature. And then when nature began to show us that we need to take responsibility for it, we came up with all kinds of excuses of why it's doing that, instead of actually solving the problem. In the new Tom McDonald song, there's this really funny line where it talks about how if trees created Wi-Fi, we'd probably plant them for free. But it's too bad that we just need them to breathe. And I thought that line was so well worded. It's just like, it's one of those moments where you're like, yeah, if trees did provide Wi-Fi, I bet we would be planting them all over in mass. But because we only need them to breathe, it's not as important. So when you look at that from just a line, like, let's just say, but that actually sums up the generation that's going on right now, like the world that we're in, is we don't think that breathing is as important as the internet. What does that tell us about our own connection to the world? What does that tell us about humanity's connection to the world? It tells us that there's a course correction coming, that there's something that we can't see that needs to happen so that we can be free again, because we've moved ourselves into an addicted space that we don't know how to get out of. And I think that's what September brings. I think that as we come through September and we get that push and that clarity on the top of the mountain, because that's what the 21st is, the top of the mountain, we'll make it to that mountain. Then we're going to go back in the valley. And I think that October and November are going to be some very strong months of pressure as we like take what we learned and apply it into the valley and change the valley and make it where we want to be, instead of the dangerous place that's overgrown with thorns and super scary because we're taught that we don't know how to navigate it. But our own internal guidance will navigate us through the worst of situations with no issue, if we just listen and handle what's in front of us.
I've played that mountaintop game before, and I used to think there was something wrong with me when I couldn't sustain that experience of clarity, that peak experience that would happen maybe after a festival, maybe after some other inner work that I would do. And it was about a decade ago in 2012, 2013 that I came to this realization of, oh no, there's this expansion and integration cycle, and it aligns with the rhythms of nature. Right. And that's when I started to work with nature's systems, the elemental forces, the like learning from the rhythms of how nature works in order to live and create on this planet. So I think a lot of us remember being in other realms where, you know, you could think something, it would happen, right? It would just be that easy. And here we have to play the organic timing game. We get to play with Mother Nature and with the elemental systems and with the wheel of the year and with our bodies being these organic machines that we get to play in with all of the beauty that comes with that, right? And as you've said before, we don't actually have the wisdom to be able to handle the responsibility in this particular place to have that kind of creation instantaneously happen. So,
yeah. Well, I mean, you have to think about it in the where our memories are coming from, because you guys don't have full recall yet. You don't realize yet that you didn't have free will. You had the capability to create, but you didn't have free will at the level you have here. Mm-hmm. That's the thing that makes Earth very magical and special. Is like, this is the first time we've ever been given this level of free will. Yeah, we have bumpers. We're not supposed to destroy the entire Earth with a nuclear holocaust or anything crazy, right? But we still could. It would just lead to a reset of the planet. Like, we would go and like, yes, we're going to do this thing. We're going to push the button, and then the world would freeze. And then we would be in front of the button again, and we'd be like, I guess I'm not supposed to do that. And it would move on, right? But like, no one's going to do that because that's not supposed to happen. That's not part of where we're headed. But we have free will at like the greatest level we've ever had. So giving humans free will at that level, and then giving them the capability to spontaneously manifest without any education or support, really bad idea. Really bad idea. And I use the mass murder example because it's one of the best. Give a mass murderer teleportation capabilities. They're going to get a lot more accomplished really fast in a way that you don't necessarily want. So give them a mass murderer no capabilities whatsoever and have them earn them, and then they're no longer a mass murderer, and they're like, you know what, I feel like I'm going to meditate for a while. Oh, I got to take responsibility for all these things. Oh, okay, cool. Now I can teleport. Wow, this is kind of cool. They're not going to go and use that in the way that they would have used it, right? And that's humanity. Humanity has this growing up that has to occur. For the longest time, we've been lied to. We've lived a lie. We don't know it yet. We're about to find out very clearly. But all of these things have to come clear. If we don't have clarity, then how are we going to handle the power of God, so to speak, right? So what that means is we're now learning to be responsible at the level that is necessary to handle that power. And that power is coming. It will come to all of us that choose to go forward in responsibility. You'll find it. The resources, the support necessary, the capability, your body's health, like all of these things are going to come online at new levels over the next 8 months. It's going to be massive what happens on this planet. But it's hard for us to fathom. In I think it's Japan or China, I can't remember, they call it a black swan event, a capability for something to occur that is impossible for it to occur in the mind. Like the idea of the black swan is a whole story. Like they didn't think that they were real. They thought they were made up until they saw their first one. And it caused this weird thing to happen in their brain because for the very first time ever, they experienced the black swan and they didn't know that they could be real because they were so rare. So everyone thought that that was a lie. It's kind of like I actually saw a black deer on my property for the first time. And it was like a nightmare buck. I'd never seen anything like it. It's like, how is this even possible? I didn't know it was real. Like you look it up, it's real. But like no one would believe you. Well, fun story. In China, I think it was yesterday or the day before yesterday, a black swan appeared. And that is a ushering in of major change. They're extremely rare and very majestic creatures. So when a black swan appears, it's the acknowledgement that the world is about to change drastically. And we just had it happen. So that was like perfectly with all my predictions and everything that's about to happen and unfolding is now this black swan lands. And it lands, and I believe it was on the 5th. So I think it was that day. But it was like the ushering in of this next phase. And the black swan symbolizes the beauty and the grace of destruction. So the beauty and the grace of destruction doesn't mean like it's a destructive act and it's like damaging and destroying. It's a necessary part of creation. And so that dance of that grace is part of that process. So a graceful destruction is the greatest thing you can ever ask for because it will only remove that which no longer serves. And that was kind of a huge sign because it was like, okay, cool. This is acknowledging that things are about to change drastically on the planet, but in a graceful way. And that's something that I'm looking forward to witnessing is like, what will that look like? How will grace be brought into destruction as we move forward into clarity?
Nature does show us that the destruction can happen, right? Rhythmically, every year there's a whole destruction and then regeneration purpose, but there's also that fallow time where things are, no, I don't want to say the word dead, but like hibernating, right? Like integrating and preparing for the next phase. Do you feel like there's going to be a similar almost, I want to say like lull, like integration time before things really pick up again in terms of our ability to create?
I think that what we're about to go into is going to be seen as destruction for the majority of people. And it's going to be very intense in a way that we can't understand. And I think that that's part of it, that no human being will understand the intensity because it will show us a new way to look at ourselves. And I think that we need something that will be able to do that. I go back to like, I love Marvel movies. I think they're very well done and there's so many codes in them. And there's a scene, well, actually I can't, never mind. For all of you out there, not spoiling it. There's an idea that we really can't see ourselves anymore. We've grown so accustomed to this world that we live in, whether you're an American or whether you're in India or whether you're in France, it doesn't matter. Like, you've grown accustomed to your life. And I think that there's going to be a core shaking that will occur that will shake us out of our lives in a comfort way so that we can begin to see clearly. A great example of this is anyone who's ever camped for more than a week. When you get home and you take your shower for the very first time and you realize how powerful and amazing a shower is as a concept, and like having air conditioning and all these ideas that we have, which are great if you use them in certain ways, but we forget like how different we have it, you know? And I think that there is going to be a core shaking of the system that is going to help us to remember that. And again, I with the black swan event, like I think it's going to be something that's graceful in a way that it's going to hurt us a little bit, but only hurt us in the places that's not true. And then I think that that's going to take time, because if you've ever looked at any integration cycle, whenever an experience occurs, it usually takes 6 to 8 months for that experience to be understood by enough people that they can process it. So that would be my timeline. If I were just to guess, would be about May to June of next year is when we're going to be looking around going, okay, I get why this event had to occur. I get the things that are making sense. Now they're finally coming together in a way. It's actually kind of cool because in May, I'm actually going to be planting 10,000 trees in Costa Rica. So the capability to like help that usher in with planting CRM trees and doing all the other things, it's great. I didn't plan all of this. I just felt called to do this thing. So I did this thing, felt called to do this thing, right? And that's the power of understanding God's will versus man's will. Like, we have free will, and then there's God's will. God's will and free will work together perfectly. It's fascinating. It doesn't make any sense because it's not possible, and yet it is so possible, and it does happen every single time. But it's a fascinating concept because your free will is like, I'm going to do this thing, and then you find that the thing's there, and you're like, wait, how is it even possible if this thing's here? Like, there's no way that this is here, and then it's there because you followed your free will in God's will, and you didn't know it, and you won't know it. And that's the beauty of God's will. You cannot, as a human being, process God's mind because God exists outside of time and above time. And our minds can't wrap around that. It doesn't work. We can't even understand outside of time, let alone above outside of time. Like, how would that even work if it's infinite? So the idea is that as we move into conscious creatorship, as we begin to understand what it looks like to be ourselves in the world, really, not just ourselves in the world, question mark, ourselves in the world, really, we're going to go through a period where there's going to be a readjustment that occurs. And I think that that's where we come back into true harmony with nature. I think that's when we start to realize, hey, what we've done was the best we could have done. And we come into forgiveness and we begin to discover and really, truly change this world into the world that we all know that it can be. But I do think that there is going to be some pretty hard times in the winter. I do think that, and that's normal. Like, the winter is about preparation. Like, we prepare for the winter in the fall so that we have what we need to make it through the winter into the summer, right? Into that capability to come into spring and summer. And so that phase that we're going to go through is just going to show us. And if we do what's in front of us, I can promise this to anyone out there, if you just do what's in front of you, you're going to make it. And that could be that you go and do things that don't make sense at the time. Like, you might end up at a forest and be like, hey, I'm going to pray to this tree. I don't know why I'm doing it, but it's in front of me. I'm going to pray to this tree. And then the tree might give you calm. And you might be like, oh, wow, all this anxiety that I had is gone. I'm not saying every tree is going to do that. But if you go with what's in front of you, you're always going to have everything you need. That's the coolest part about this game. We've built the game for ourselves. It's not some deity up there trying to like control us and make us horrible and to like poke us and like has a magnifying glass and it's aiming the sun through it. It's not that. It's the highest version of us out there is saying, hey, here's the next thing. Cool. Here's the next thing. Cool. And they have like level of patience I can't even fathom because I do really stupid things constantly. I mean, I do. Like, there are times where I'm like, I know that I should do this thing, but I'm not going to. Oh, I really should have done that thing. I'm glad that I learned that though. Right? Like, that's the whole thing is that you get to choose. You get to be obstinate. You get to be the child that evolves into the adult, right? Like, you mature. And that's the beauty of it. As you're maturing, you're getting more of your gifts, you're getting more of your capabilities. If you're immature, then you get more opportunities to become mature. And that's the freedom. If you really understand life like that, if you just boil it down to that simple concept, there's a freedom and a beauty and a grace to life.
Mm. Absolutely. And I feel like that's the missing piece that some people don't understand about, creation, manifestation, the futuring that they see that's maybe being dropped in by those higher versions of themselves. And they go panic, like, how do I get there? It's overwhelming. But that understanding that the creative forces of, other higher aspects of you are helping you with all of it, right? They're dropping in the pieces that you couldn't possibly try to write in for yourself. They're far more creative and imaginative, right? Because they've got that visionary perspective of the whole game, that they can move the pieces around for you. So that element of surrender and trust and then faith allows you to navigate it with their help instead of trying to control it from your ego or your limited human perspective.
100%.
Yeah. That's a difficult step for some people as well, to let go of the control piece and not know. Right, that unknown factor is again something that's really scary for a lot of us because they don't want to be in that place of unknown or the dark. The
100%.
Into the unknown is going through my head right now. I'm like, just be like Elsa.
Yeah, well, I recommend Frozen 1 and 2 for anyone that hasn't seen it. Highly recommend it. If you watch Frozen 2, it's pretty much what we need to learn now. And so it's really perfectly timed. If you watch Frozen 1 because you haven't seen Frozen 2, highly recommend that too. Great codes in both of them. If you haven't seen Frozen 1, it's going to be weird watching Frozen 2. So definitely watch Frozen 1 first. Highly recommend it. Great. Ultimately, we have the power to do what we need to do. We just don't necessarily know how. Mm-hmm. And again, this is that discovery phase. For those of you that get downloads, remember that you're understanding reality from there to here, not the other way around. You living your life is how you understand reality from here to there. So the downloads can actually be confusing because it's like a different type of translation that has to occur. I went mad when I started seeing the future because it didn't make sense. I've been telling people that we would be at this place in time and space for years, like 10 plus years preparing for this. And to have that faith, to see it clearly and to let things change around it wasn't easy. I started out in control. I was like, hey, this needs to happen, so this happens, so this happens, so this happens. And because this needs to happen, I'm going to make sure it happens no matter what. Oh, it's on the side of me right now. Well, it's still going to happen. So I'm going to go focus on, and that was that process. I feel like the greatest lesson I've learned this year so far is to not be a protector. That's the greatest lesson I've learned. As a male, I was taught my role in life is to be a protector, not a protector of females, but a protector of everyone. So the moment that I have enough to have what I need, then the rest I'm supposed to use to shield others from their lessons. Now, I know that sounds pretty stupid once you hear it coming out like that, right? But ultimately, that's what I was taught. That's what I believed. That's what I acted as. And by doing so, I shielded others from their lessons, so much so that they became spiritually immature. Who would have thought? Without lessons, people don't know how to grow. It's fascinating, right? Again, I make it into a joke because I finally gotten to the point where I can look at it and be like, wow, that was ridiculous. But at the time, I felt like that was the most important role for me. I felt like that was what I was here to do. And it was, because it was what was in front of me to do at that time. But I tried to apply that again in this year, thinking, well, I don't know what I'm doing, so I'm going to go back to who I used to be. And the universe just like smited me instantly. And it was like, okay, cool. I realized I can't do that anymore. And I had to rebuild everything in my life from this freedom to let it be. And that was the greatest gift I've ever had for myself personally, was to realize that there were these unconscious patterns of control that were running as this protector of humanity, this protector of all of these things. And many of you that saw me go through this saw that I stepped back from Facebook for a bit. I stepped back from everything because it was like, wait a second, this is not what I'm here to do. I don't know what I'm here to do. So instead of just praying, I'm going to meditate too. And I'm going to figure out what is clarity again. What does it look like? How do I move forward as this new me? This me that is still responsible for everything that it's responsible for, but it's not trying to protect others or control others and take away their experience so that they're safe. And that's been kind of what I've noticed personally, and a lot of men and that I know are also going through that. I've seen a lot of women go through sexuality, like they're trying to find their power and their creative potential again, and they don't know how to do it. And I've seen men that are like, oh no, don't do that. Let's protect you from your sexuality. And it's been really fun to watch now that I'm like unplugged from that game and I'm like paying attention. I'm like, huh, okay, yeah, I see what you're doing there. See what you're doing there. That makes total sense to me because I just went through this. I'm glad that you were there. And when you're ready, just know that I'm being an example of something else and they can control their own sexuality. It's like, it's amazing. They're built perfectly. I don't know. I know it's a crazy thought, but like women, they're perfect, right? Wow. For all the men out there, you're like, here's the other thing. Men are perfect too. We're built exactly like we need to be built. There's nothing wrong with being a man or a woman or anything in between, but accepting it. Accepting that you have these patterns, these core things that are in your DNA from eons ago. Really accepting that means looking at yourself and all the ways that you're playing games that aren't yours. And when you free yourself of that, it'll be time for discovery. And I think that's what redemption is. Redemption isn't that we're so screwed that we can't survive, that we can't make it. Redemption is, oh, I'm actually capable and worthy of being greater than I'm currently playing at. And that's not a bad thing. That's not a thing where we're like, oh, we should be ashamed that we're not playing at our capability. We didn't know we had a capability. It was kind of like somebody just took the cap off and was like, by the way, you're free. Do what you want. And we're like, wait, what? I don't know how to get out of this thing though. I mean, like, there's glass walls. And then they're like, you created the glass walls. Wait, what? I created the glass walls. Right? So then you uncreate the glass walls and then you see more glass walls and you're like, well, I didn't create those. So other people had to create those. Actually, you created the whole game. Wait, what? I created the whole game? I even uncapped myself? What is going? No, I can't handle this. And then you create tubes again and you're like hiding in there. You're like, okay, it's going to be safe. And then your divinity's like uncapped. And you're like, wait, what? This feels familiar. Deja vu. And that's been kind of this year. In a nutshell, you are powerful and more amazing than you can ever imagine. But the thing is, you can't acknowledge that until you can acknowledge it in everyone else. Mm-hmm. Because if you try to become special, if you make your wokeness a magical capability that no one else is able to hold, and you have to control them into it, then all you're doing is showing that you're not capable. But the thing is, you're lying to yourself because you and everyone else is capable. That's the coolest part about this planet right now. Like, we're all masterclass souls. We are here because we have earned the right to be. And we are about to play the greatest game humanity's ever been given. And the coolest part is we gave it to ourselves. Like, how awesome is that? As a video gamer, it's like the game I've waited for forever is finally about to be released. And I get to play it, and I get to communicate with the developers in the moment that I'm playing it, so that it always has the perfect experiences for me to play. All the bugs that I find along the way, I get to tell them about. I can pray about that. I can be like, hey, this bug happened today where this person glitched out in front of me and turned out to be something very strange. I just want to acknowledge that that's in the game, and then they can solve it, right? It's amazing, the power and capability that we have right now. And a lot of us are afraid because that's what the other side wants us to understand. And that's okay too. Like, they're trying to figure out fear. We're trying to figure out hope. Neither side's wrong, but which side do you want to play at? And that's okay too. Like, if you want to play on the fear side, that's totally fine. You're going to learn a lot about yourself. You're going to learn a lot about others. You're going to learn a lot about the way that the world has been functioning. And if you want to play hope and you want to play faith, you're going to learn a lot about yourself. You're going to learn a lot about the way the world is going to function. And there's nothing wrong with either. It's kind of like the more I watch the world and what it's going through, the more I see that everybody is just trying to figure out what free will means to them. Mm-hmm. And I can respect that. Like, I can look at that and I can be like, bravo that you actually understand you have it now. That is amazing. I know that you're going to make mistakes because you don't know, because no one knows, right? This is a messy time for humanity. We don't know what we don't know. And people are starting to be like, I don't know what I don't know. I'm like, yes, welcome to the club. We all don't know what we don't know. There's nothing wrong with that. We were taught we had to know everything, which is why we lied and pretended that we did, but we don't know. And there's freedom. So welcome to the side that has hope. Because if you can acknowledge you don't know what you don't know, then hope comes. You're like, oh, cool, but that means that I can know it. I just don't yet.
That's one of my favorite things about your messaging, is that there is hope, and that we are headed to a place that is more beautiful than we can even imagine currently. We can't even comprehend it. And I know for so many people right now, they're watching the world burn, and the hope is in short supply, especially when it comes into situations where, for example, you're in Texas, right?
Yep.
We all know that there are people that are trying to exert their free will upon others, right? Removing their free will and doing some really interesting things with women's sexuality, for example. And I'm curious how you would frame this experience for people that are having their free will sort of pushed upon, where it might not be right in front of them to be able to do something, but they still feel like they want to be shifting the energy. What can somebody who is saying, I want to do something, but I'm not sure how?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. The first thing is stop. Whatever you're doing, just stop for a second. It doesn't have to be like a 10-hour stop or anything crazy, right? Like you just have to pause so that you stop moving in the direction that you're not sure of. And then ask yourself, like I put my hand on my heart and I'm just like, hey, what's in front of me right now? And it might literally be to get a glass of water. And then I go get the glass of the water and I'm on my way to get the glass of water and I start thinking about things that I don't know that I'm thinking about. And I get the water and I'm like, okay, I committed to doing this, so I'm just gonna get the water right now. And all these thoughts are coming through my head. And I'm like, okay, cool. Well, then I take a sip of water and immediately my body's like, you have everything you need now. So I want you to go sit in this chair and do this meditation, the style way, get these things down. Now go write this technology and do this thing. And just like, oh, wow, that was so fast. Because all I had to do was stop my movements that were unconscious and come back into the stream. And the moment I get back into the stream, it's like, how long can I stay in the stream? Because there's so much information that's constantly flowing. And then you get knocked out of the stream. I have a note called Present Time, the Impossible Task. And if you haven't read it, it's on MTVO.org, but definitely read it, you'll understand. Ultimately, that's kind of the way I look at life, is like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing. Oh, right, that's also, I'm not gonna move from not knowing what I'm doing. I'm gonna pause and come into clarity because I can, right? And one of the greatest practices that we use in the organization is called the Great Pause. So it's like, I am committing to drink the stream. I've just honored my commitment as my divinity. I am the personality personified by the ascended master quality. So to bring that into form and to follow through is immediately to commune with my divinity. And by doing so, I've now created a deeper connection with that divinity. We do it like 40 times in a day if we get lost. That's totally fine, no big deal. I do it with the doorknob. It's really easy. I am committing to do this blank. I'm not going to say it out loud because then I have to get up and go open the door. But ultimately, like, you commit and you follow through, and then you commit and then you follow through until you know clearly what to do next. And that's the pattern interrupt that gets you out of unconscious behavior into conscious behavior. It's one of the greatest practices I ever wrote. Like, it's just changed my life forever.
I love that. And I had it come through in a similar way, but I have hands on the heart and I have myself ask, what's the most loving thing I could do for myself in this moment? And the answer is almost always drink some water. And then that clarity comes through. So that kind of truth just comes through in the different lensing and the different wording, but it leads us to that same place.
I found that consciously drinking water is the secret to life. Like, if you truly consciously drink water, not just unconsciously, because unconsciously you're holding water and you're coating it with all the things that are running through you instead of you. But if you consciously commit to drink water and you drink that water, it's like sipping a piece of God. And immediately you're like, oh, clarity. Yeah, I was looking for this. But the thing is, and for those of you that are like, why don't I do that? You got to mature. If I were to give you the greatest secret ever held back from you, it's very simple. It's this. You're probably anywhere between a 3 to a 7-year-old. That's probably around where you are. Now, if you've done some work, you might be an 11-year-old, right? But like, most people are in their teenage years and they think that they're like God, which is really cute to me. But the idea is that you're this version of you that's smaller than you in your body, right? And so everything that you're not able to grow into is all the things that you're irresponsible with. That's how it works. Well, would you expect a 7-year-old or a 3-year-old or a 2-year-old or whatever age to know how to take care of themselves? No, right? Because you have to teach them. Your divinity is the adult that begins to teach you, and it uses the world, just like a parent would, to grow into those things. So if you don't have the tools available to you because you've regressed, because you got triggered and now you're like an 11-year-old, and you taught your maybe you're great and you actually found a way to teach back in time and space, and you've used time track work. Most people don't know how to do that. So what happens is, let's say they're a 28-year-old and they've gone to a workshop and they've learned a really cool lesson and they were like, yeah, woohoo, this is awesome. And then they go out into the world and they get triggered down to a 3-year-old. Well, they're not 28 anymore, so the lesson they have isn't relevant because they're now a 3-year-old. The tools that they have grown into aren't capable of being used because they're younger. And then what happens is we then become abusive to ourselves because we should know better, but we shouldn't know better because we're a 3-year-old. And it's been really fun to watch because it doesn't make any sense. I teach people to take your tool back, and you're not going to be able to do it on day one. Most people can't. What it means is, like, let's say that you learn this new tool in this workshop. Teach the year version of you below it. Teach that year version of you below it. Your languaging of that tool, unless you have full mastery of it, is going to change constantly until you get to your 3-year-old. And by the time you get to your 3-year-old, it might be like, blah, 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 blah. And your 3-year-old's like, what am I supposed to do with that? And that means that you have new angles and new ways to learn the technology so that you can get it back down to your 3-year-old. And maybe by that time you're like, well, if you think about a little tiny airplane and the way that wind hits it, that's turbulence. You know, you teach it like you would teach a 3-year-old. And then you've mastered the concept. If you can teach a child a PhD level concept, you've mastered it all the way through. And then go teach it to the world because we really need you. Please go out into the world and teach. That being said, that process is to go through all of your ages. Teach yourself something. If you want to apply it all the way to the beginning. Because the next time you get triggered as a 3-year-old, you're like, oh, turbulence. I get it. This is just temporary. And your 3-year-old self grows up into a 4-year-old self because it cannot grow unless it's tested. So if you teach it the tools it needs and it passes those tests, it matures until eventually you actually have adults walking around the earth instead of little children pretending to be gods. And that's going to be a great world. That's the world we're headed into. But it requires applying the lessons. It's great to learn something, but it means nothing if it's not applied.
So many of us really hoarded information, right? We'd go and we'd learn as much as we could without taking the time to integrate it, to embody it. And then you would just go like, yeah, but I know that already.
Yep. Instead of I understand. Yep.
Yeah. Right. Actually living it and practicing it. And I know in the past for me, that could have been a thing that I was doing because I was thinking that I needed to know everything. And so I would hoard the information and not always take that integration time and learn it and actually live it and be it, and then be able to share it and teach it.
Do you want me to tell you a mind-blowing thing?
Yes, please.
You're a computer, basically, right? Like you're a conscious computer or a quantum computer. We're the closest thing to it. So there isn't an infinite space that you have capability to hold memory. Just think of it from that perspective. So what happens when we stand on knowledge versus grow in wisdom is we fall harder, faster, and from greater depths. Like, so if you stand on the books of knowledge, you're just making yourself a target to be knocked over really easily. Because the wind, eventually, if you get so many books high, the wind will take you down. I mean, it's easier. So the higher up that you build on knowledge versus wisdom, the harder you're going to fall and the faster you're going to fall. And that's something to be understood, is like, if I hoard all this information, but I never integrate it, eventually the universe is going to knock me over and I'm going to forget everything because I need to, because I didn't apply anything. And that's the illusion of spirituality. The illusion of spirituality taught knowledge versus wisdom. They're like, I'll do a knowledge transfer. It's like, please don't. I already have to forget things daily so that I can remember things that are important to me. Please just stay away from me. But the average person is like, oh, I'm an empty vessel, I need to be filled. And then like the actual high level spiritual person is like, I'm an empty vessel, I'm good, thanks. Like that's the dynamic, right? Like it's literally the opposite. If you look at a true master wants to be as empty as possible so that every moment fulfills them. And you look at the illusionary master stands on books and has people worship them because they need the attention and power to stay stable. Those people block the wind from the books. And then eventually what happens is one of those people go, wait a second, this doesn't make sense anymore. And they move and the wind comes and the teacher falls down in front of everyone. And they're all shaken. They don't understand how this could have happened. But the beauty is those people that were worshiping this person now get to see that person fall and they realize they're still on the ground, which is one of the greatest lessons they can learn at that stage, because now that they're on the ground, they can begin to create what I call grounded wisdom. Fascinating, right? You can't create grounded wisdom from a book. You just can't. I'm not saying books are bad. If you want to read books, right? But take the lesson. So like if a teacher teaches you to do the great pause in a book, apply it. Go do the great pause. Experience it. And then as you experience it, go, okay, well, how would I teach? Like I think I'm 37. I don't remember anymore, but I think I'm in my upper 30s. So let's just say I'm 37. So then I would teach my 36-year-old self this new concept. Then my 36-year-old self, not my 37-year-old self, would then teach my 35th-year-old self. And so on and so forth until I go all the way down to, I always go back to the womb because I feel like killing the lineage is really helpful for helping everyone in the world, because you can ground back into the beginning of things. And if you can teach the beginning of you, if you can teach a child that can't be taught, which the only answer is telepathy, by the way, but if you can teach a child that can't be taught with words, the answer to something, it means that you have the concept completely, fully, 100% understood, which then allows the concept to expand so that you don't fully understand it anymore. And that's the magic of the world. That's the infinite game. You can never understand anything in its totality in 2 moments. It doesn't work. The first moment that you do, the entire game expands, and now everyone has more capability. So that's really what we're here to do, is to keep expanding until the gaps and ravines that we once had, they don't exist anymore. So there's nowhere to stumble and fall because we've created a firm foundation on truth. And that's the age of truth. That's what we're in. We just started it on the 18th of August. So we aren't even a month in yet. And we're already witnessing the firm foundation being built where there were once potholes and like all these things, these roads of consciousness are being woven together. It's amazing to watch. So for anyone out there who's lost in fear, just take a moment and realize the world's changed drastically in a good way. It doesn't look like it if you look at the world. But if you look at the trees, if you look at nature, if you look at the way things are relating, if you look at people and their conversations, people are asking real questions for the first time in, I don't know, like 2,000 or 3,000 years. It's been a while.
The questions are key. And so is acceptance. I'm accepting. I forgot to close my office door tightly so my cat wouldn't come and play, but she wanted to revel in the codes and the wisdom bombs and be representing nature and the animal kingdom for our conversation.
Yeah, it works for me. I've been watching her and having fun with her.
Yeah, just circling with me, knocking things over on my desk here and there. But before the pandemic, I would have been frustrated because I thought I had to show up in a professional way, right? Would need to have everything perfect. And this happened when my daughter was at home with me and I was working from home and she was only 4 and she would interrupt when I'd be in a session or be on a live and I would have to go. And after the 3rd or 4th interruption, I'd be like, what are you doing? Right? Like, what? You don't need more snacks. You got 37 snacks. And I had to look at that trigger and be like, what is even happening here? And it always came back to, she would be working for whoever I was working with to give them a pause, and they would have that time and they would have that clarity. So now I, try to get her to be independent and things like that, but she will come and she will offer the time and I'll be like, oh, great. Here's an opportunity for you to pause, for you to integrate, because otherwise I would just steamroll ahead with the information or with whatever I was sharing. So it's this gift. These interruptions are always a gift. So that acceptance was, I think, my greatest lesson through 2020.
I feel like acceptance was everybody's greatest lesson through 2020 because everyone had the idea of what was going to happen before chaos entered it, so to speak, but didn't really. The thing is, like, my sensei had told me right before it was going to happen. They were like, "You built this beautiful sandcastle. Everything you've ever dreamed and hoped, it's done." I'm like, "Yeah, that's awesome. There's going to be a thing called chaos. It's going to come in and crush it right in front of you. Don't react." So I'm like, don't react. Everything I've ever built is going to get crushed. Like everything. I'm going to be okay with it. It's going to be fine. And then it happens and you're like, this is not okay. This is not okay at all. Like, no. Like, do you understand how long it took me to build that sandcastle? And they're like, "Why'd you build it in sand then?" I'm like, "You're right. That's actually a brilliant thing." Okay, releasing the sandcastle, letting it go. And that was 2020 for me. 2020 was like, I would build something and it would be crushed. And I would build something and it would be crushed. And I build something and it would be crushed. And I was like, why am I even building it? Oh, because I actually have fun building it. That's why. Oh, does it matter that it's getting crushed? No, because it gives me an opportunity to rebuild it better. And then I just kept doing that over and over again. So eventually it was like, whatever happens, happens, but I'm going to build the sandcastle because it's in front of me to build the sandcastle. And then when I did that, it stopped getting crushed. I came from that place of like, oh, it's in front of me to build the sandcastle. I don't care what happens next. I built the sandcastle and then it was like, wait. Like you went over to somebody else's sandcastle. You're destroying theirs. You see that I built mine, right? They're like, yeah, but it doesn't matter anymore. It's like, it's kind of like when you get bullied, if you just like don't do anything, you don't respond in that way to like put energy towards it, they usually just move on pretty fast. It's the same concept. I didn't realize that. I had to like actually prove that because I had things that mattered to me, which was hilarious. If you look back at it, it's hilarious because things matter to you. That means that you have made matter, that you have created the densest of all things in form. Yep, just be prepared. That's going to go away. But if you let them go, like if you hold out your hand and let the butterfly land, and you don't care whether the butterfly lands, it often lands. And then as long as you don't do this and kill it, it can go and do its thing, and then it lands again, usually before it leaves. It's pretty fascinating to watch how nature will interact with you if you don't try to control it. And that was my greatest lesson in 2020. It was just like, let go of control. And in 2021, it's been let go of being a protector. Let people have their experiences. Just know that they're going to do things that aren't going to make any sense to you because it's their life. Yeah, it makes sense moving forward. And I don't know what 2022 is going to bring. I'm really looking forward to it because the year of discovery, I mean, what am I going to learn about myself? That's going to be amazing. So.
I love that. So much letting go has been the theme for all of us because we can't take it with us where we're going.
Exactly.
And the control piece, I know there are people that are still working on it, right? That are ready to do that last step. And I think that would serve people really well walking into these next few weeks to let go of that. It's not even control, it's the illusion of control that they have, right? Because we can't. We can pretend like we can, but then that puts us into a place of reacting and trying to defend, right? Trying to hold on to things instead of allowing, being in the flow. And that's a really interesting paradoxical consciousness of all of this creation and manifestation and being a conscious creator, right? There is a flow to it and there needs to be a surrender. And I think for me, the key to that, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, is when I want to create something, when I have a vision, it's like this or something even better, right?
Yeah.
And
That's
letting
a great
it
way to look at it. This or something even better. Yeah. The most important thing when you're creating your vision is, am I responsible enough to handle that which I want? I found that anything that you are responsible in handling, the universe will provide, literally every single time. So like if I want, like, here's a great example. Everybody tells me, I get this all the time. They're like, I want to open a retreat center, Jason. I'm like, cool. It seems to be a collective thing. Lots of people want to open retreat centers. That's awesome. Are you ready to handle the ins and outs of it? And they're like, well, I just feel like I need to open a retreat center. I'm like, cool. Have you actually learned about retreat centers? Have you learned about the income, the streams? Like, how are you going to build the retreat center? Like, and then by the time like I've asked like the fourth question, they're like, I don't want to build a retreat center anymore. I'm like, okay, good. That's probably wise. Because if you had been given the funds to build the retreat center, you would have failed miserably because you weren't willing to do the work necessary to evolve into the person that can run the retreat center. So thank you for acknowledging that before someone gave you the funds. I've seen this a lot with startup companies. They're like, I have this great vision. I've done no work whatsoever. Give me millions of dollars. And some of them actually get funded. And some of them survive it. Others, they just fall apart and people lose millions of dollars because it was a poor investment. But the truth is, if you can vision it, like you can truly acknowledge every step, every intricacy, every situation that you're going to have to do, and you want to continue it, you'll have the resources necessary. It's kind of like people are always like, I want to be a millionaire, Jason. I'm like, okay, cool. Tell me what you do with it. And they're like, well, I would go do this thing and this thing and this thing and this thing. I'm like, okay, that's $100. So keep going. And they're like, okay, well, all these things and this thing, and I'd probably open this thing and do this thing. And I'm like, okay, good. Now you're about $100,000. Keep going. And they're like, I can't. I'm like, good. So create a $100,000 vision. Take that, grow from there. There's no shame in being a $10 person, $100 person, $1,000 person, $10,000 person, $100,000 person. It's a journey to becoming a millionaire mindset. It's not about just arriving there. And people are like, well, money is like the root of all evil. No, money is a capability to see what we are as real people. That's it. Money only reveals the character that's hidden within. That's it at any time. And I say this to people, like, if you are not a drug addict and you've never done drugs and you're given $100,000 and you have a version of you that wants to do drugs, you're going to become a drug addict. Congratulations, it's going to happen. And people are like, that's really messed up. How dare you call me a drug addict? It's like, you've never had the opportunity. And if a part of you, I'm not saying you need it, I'm saying if a part of you needs it, and you don't do the work necessary, and you're given a windfall, you're going to learn that part of you. All money does is reveal the character within. So like if you have any hidden aspects of you and somebody gives you lots of money, it's going to happen. Well, companies are the same thing. If your vision is weak because you can't see clearly, what's going to happen? Then the money is going to cause the vision to crash because you can't see clearly. You didn't design it properly, and all it did was just run it through the ground. But if you can see clearly because you've thought everything through, and you're not going to think everything through, I can tell you this right now. If I say be a millionaire and you've never been a millionaire, you don't know anything about the things you don't know anything about. You're going to make lots of mistakes. But if you can get to a millionaire in your mind and then the money comes, it's going to show you those parts. And if you can acknowledge those parts and say, I know that I've never been a millionaire, but I'm on the journey to it, then you can arrive. But how movable are you? How capable of letting go of your vision and your dream for the greater good are you? Because that's what we need. And I'm not talking about like overnight successes. I'm talking about real, stable millionaires. Like we need those right now because those are what's going to help fund and change the world. Right now, we still use money because it's the best tool that we have right now. I think money is a great thing. I think it's a wonderful thing. I think there's a lot of corruption in it right now. And I think that slowly as we figure out how to fix that corruption, money will go back to what it's designed to be, a tool to reveal the character so that we can find who we actually are. But for now, we haven't figured that out yet. And if we need to figure that out, it's the same thing with visioning, right? It's the same thing. Figure out, like if you want to build a retreat center, if you want to have a puppy, don't just go buy a puppy. That works. You can totally learn, but it's a lot more hardships than necessary. And I'm not saying go and read books on how to have a puppy. I mean, like literally just in your mind, I have a puppy now. Okay, cool. It's jumping around. How do I feel about it jumping around? Okay, cool. It just peed on the carpet. How do I feel about that? Like really go through those so that when it happens, you can go, cool, I know what to do here because I've already envisioned and I've already understood what it is. And there's going to be things you couldn't have envisioned, things you couldn't imagine ever happening. And that's where you go, am I strong enough in my own character to make it through this? And if the answer is yes, then you're going to succeed. It's that simple. Just don't give up.
That retreat center example is so good because I do hear a million people say that maybe someday I would like to do that. And then I realized for myself, maybe way down the road, if I have someone that can manage it. But my vision is actually to just go to other people's retreat centers and have retreats and not do all of the holding of the space. So I had to check in with myself. Was this vision to have a retreat center even mine? Or was I tapping into someone else's vision because we needed more?
Yeah. Grounding it. So this is the other thing that's important. I think I said this actually in your last live with you, but there's this river, and what happens is river ideas. So when you get this idea, you're like, oh, wow, this is amazing. This is my idea, blah, 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 right? but then you can't solve it, you throw it back into the river of ideas. But it's a little bit more thought out. It's a little bit more put together. So what I do is when I get great ideas, I do the best I can with them. And then when they're not in front of me anymore, I just throw them back into the river. And sometimes they come back to me and they've been more fleshed out because everyone in front of me was like, hey, I don't know how to do it either, but I know how to do this part. So I did this for you. And then they throw it in, right? And then so eventually the river of ideas is always brought through because we eventually will solve the thing. So whenever any major invention occurs, it's a conglomeration of humanity's effort, not just that person's. I celebrate the person for being able to complete it, but I also celebrate humanity for the step that it has just made. And that's one of those really cool things about it is like, if you have the vision of a retreat center, maybe somebody else can't solve it yet. So you find the part of you that goes, okay, cool. Well, this is the things, but I don't want to do this thing. So this isn't in front of me anymore. And you just throw it over you because the next person behind you gets it. And again, it's a circle. So there's no person in front of you is the best person, right? Like it's not, it's a misunderstanding because it's a circle. So everything you're throwing is actually helping the person in front of you and the person behind you. It's pretty cool, right? And then it all helps humanity because when you solve it, it's solved. So the next time that you find that this thing comes in front of you and you're like, oh, I must get it done, just realize that you must get the part of it that's in front of you done. And then just surrender it because it's not about ownership. The fifth dimension is not about ownership. It's just about completion. Like we don't care who does it, just do it. As long as it gets done, that's all that matters, you know? So be aware of that because I feel like that's the biggest issue. Retreat centers are ridiculously complicated for the record. I'm building one, actually I'm building 55 of them. And the first one is almost done. It's really complicated. Lots of money that I didn't know about, lots of things. Like I really wish that I listened to me now, but the reason I'm able to give you that advice is because I've learned the lessons. Opening all the companies I've opened, doing all the things I've done. I did it where you just jump in the deep end and learn to swim, but every single time. And I feel like as I'm older now, I just feel like it doesn't make sense to do that to myself anymore. All the resources, all the headaches, all the confusion, the chaos that occurs from it. It's just like, you know, if I want to do something, I'm just going to see it through as best I can and then let go of it. But I didn't know that back then. That's one of the lessons that I've learned over the last 10 years is you can only do the best you can do and then you give it up. And then if it comes back to you, then it's time to do the best you can do again. If it doesn't come back to you, then somebody else completed it and the game moves forward. So, but retreat centers are a great example because so many people are telling me them constantly, like, I want you to come to my retreat center. I'm like, cool, have you built it yet? No. And I'm like, okay, it's gonna be at least a year then, probably. It's gonna take some time here. What have you actually thought about with your retreat center? Well, not really anything. I just feel like I'm gonna build one and that you should come. Yeah, let's touch base again in like 4 years. Because in 4 years, you might be like, actually, I decided not to build a retreat center, or you might actually have succeeded. And as you come through that process, if you need support, let me know, because like we'll work together and we'll help to get this. But like you got to have the willingness to do what's in front of you. And I always cite IRS tax law. Learning IRS tax law was one of the most important things I ever did for me and my company. Hated every moment of it. Literally, like despised reading tax law. Despised it. There are very few things in life that I would say the word despise about. And learning IRS tax law was one of them. Because it was like, okay, I really have to understand this for things that are important to me. This is not important to me at all. It's in front of me. And I keep throwing it, and I keep throwing it, and I keep throwing it, and it keeps coming back because I'm not solving it. So then I eventually solved it, and then I threw the part that I needed, and then I got a whole tax consultant agency now. So I don't ever have to do it anymore. And that's the beauty of life is like, I had to handle my part of it. And then once I did, I was able to let it go. And then it manifested exactly as it needed to. But my part of it, me as Jason, my part of it was to learn certain things at the time. And I think that's important for anyone moving forward in their life is just like, what is your part in the thing in front of you? Don't think the whole thing in front of you is your part. What is your part? Just ask. Like, oh, this whole thing. A great example is a lot of people are in rights activist mode right now, which is great. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but maybe if you ask yourself what in this is in front of me, maybe it was just to make the flyers. Maybe it was just to go to the march. Maybe it was to have conversations about this with other people, right? Oftentimes what happens is we go, oh, this is in front of me. And we jump into the totality of it. And so we become an activist and do all the things that we need to do and all this other stuff, right? When really that might not have been what was in front of us. Maybe it was just to make the signs. Maybe it was to have the conversations with our friends. And again, if you are in front of it to be the activist and do everything, thank you, right? Like, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. I'm simply stating, like, what part is this for me? Because we get lost in sub games really fast as humans, and we'll do the whole thing. Like, a great example is yoga. I've seen so many people, it's in front of them to go to a yoga class. They go to the yoga class, and then they like somehow drink the Kool-Aid. And then the next thing I know, like 3-4 weeks later, they're wearing only white. They have become vegetarians. They look like absolute shit, to be honest, because their body is falling apart because they're not eating healthy anymore. All this stuff's happening. I'm like, dude, you just said you were going to go to a yoga class. Oh yeah, I've been going every day, 4 times a day now. I've got this breath thing going for me. It's amazing. I'm like, well, how are you doing that? Didn't you have a job? Oh, I quit my job. It's actually really well. I'm only going to yoga. I'm like, well, how are you affording it? Oh, I'm using my retirement. Look, when you went to the yoga class, what was it that was in front of you? Oh, well, actually, interesting. I feel like this one position was in front of me. Cool. So what did you learn in that position? Well, I learned all this stuff. Oh, cool. So did you apply that? No. Okay, well, what would happen if you applied that? Oh, I feel like it would help my body. Awesome. So you would stop doing other people's programs, create your own, and then your body would be healed? Well, yeah, that sounds right. I'm like, okay, cool. Go do that. And they come back like a week later and they're like wearing their normal clothes again. They are looking healthy. And I'm like, so what have you been up to? I was like, oh, well, I did that one yoga position and like my body helped to heal. And, you know, I still work with yoga, but I don't like make it this God that I made it into. And I stopped being all these things that weren't true for me. And all of a sudden I started to heal. It was pretty crazy. I'm like, yeah, it's amazing when you live the life that you created for yourself, how amazingly amazing your life becomes. And then usually like a few weeks later, they come back around and they're like, I can't tell you how important it was that you stopped me from doing the things I was doing. I'm like, I didn't stop you from anything. All I did was ask you a question because it was in front of me to ask you that question because you're my friend. But it's not in front of me to change that person. It was just ask. It's like, hey, I don't understand. You used to do these things, now you do these things. It's very different, very different. And that happens all the time in the spiritual world. Like, instead of asking questions about what part is it for me in this thing, we think the totality of the thing is, and so we become the totality of the thing and lose ourselves in the process.
Yeah, that permission to only take the things that are important that will serve you is really, really key, because there's so much out there. We can't actually have all of it, but we're not supposed to either, right? We get to alchemize all of these different pieces together. I think that's the funnest part. I don't even know if funnest is a word, but it is now. And bringing together, weaving together all of these parts and things and experiences and information that maybe hasn't ever been fitted together before into something new, right? Yeah. Playing with that and just creating from that place. I see a lot of people get tripped up when they want to step into their light and be a leader and do what they're here to do and shine, because they feel like they don't have anything super unique to bring through. Like, you've got super unique things. You've got your own vocabulary. So do a few other people. But a lot of us, I believe, are here to uniquely weave together the information that we actually have taken and then embodied, and then bring that forward.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I honestly, like, the only reason I'm self-taught, right? So like, I have my own languaging because it created my own understanding of reality from everything. I believe everyone is capable of that. I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. I think that what's important to understand is, like, when I teach from that self-taught space. I applied time in a different way than most people do. Instead of reading books and all the other things that many people do, which I'm not saying this is wrong, because my favorite way to read books is I hold a book and I feel called to turn to a page. I turn to the page, I feel called to turn to, like, go to a certain sentence. I read that one sentence and then I go, whoa, that just unlocked so many doors. And then I close the book, because I don't need to know that person's thoughts on why it opened those doors. I just need to know that those doors are open and I'm done. It's a code exchange, right? But that didn't just start that way. That was a process. It took me years to get where I am. I mean, let's see. So let's pretend that I'm 37, because I don't know. That would be 33 years that I've been on this path, like, consciously aware and working towards it. And I'm making tons of mistakes, just like everyone else. People don't see it because you only see what you see on the screen, right? You have no idea what I do when this thing closes. all the work that I do, all the things that I do, all the conversations that I have, right? So it's easy to think that I've got it figured out, but I don't. I make mistakes just like everyone else. I think that's what makes it so real, is when I come back from those mistakes, I share everything I learned, not to change people's choices, but to create new ones. It's like, if you want to keep going that way, that's totally fine. But also, here's what I learned when I went that way. And that's not to change the way that you're going. It's because as a human being, my job is to contribute to the human condition, to create an opportunity for a better world for everyone. And that's how I live. So I don't think that, like, a lot of people make it about being self-taught people are better and all this other stuff. They're just not. It's what is in front of you to do. If it's in front of you to be self-taught, then be self-taught until it's not in front of you. And if it's in front of you to read books until it's not in front of you, right? Because everyone has a door that they have to find within themselves. Once you open that door, information flows to you. It doesn't matter whether you were self-taught, whether you read books, it doesn't matter how you get there. You just got to get there. And that door is really easy. It's called the me door. The moment you open it, everything that you know about yourself from all your lifetimes floods out. It's crazy. And what's cool is there's no filter on it. But here's the struggle. Memories, the more dense ones come first. So what does this look like? Well, it means that all of the trauma from all of your lifetimes comes first. So this is why people always think that past lives are all traumatic. Well, no, they're infinite. So everything that could be has been. But our ability to process is always the densest first. So if you imagine this ball of light, on the outer shell of the light is the less light version of it, right? And then there's like harder stuff and harder stuff and harder stuff. When you open that door, this ball of light is starting to head to you. Here's the cool thing. Once you open the door, you can't close it again. Not in this lifetime. So the door just is like, the information just keeps coming in, and you go through the process that you go through, but eventually you hit the light. And that center core part of all that you are is where the magic happens, because at that point you have now aligned and you've now entered this thing called embodiment. But you've entered this thing called embodiment when you go through the door. The light shines through the door, but you have to go through the door to stay in embodiment. And what's really cool is, as you are in that space, everything that's not true comes up for you. And immediately when you hit a point where you can't let go of something, you're now outside the door again. And you're in that little aura of light. And you're like, oh, that was a journey. And you get to apply all those things. And then you try again. And this is the infinite game itself until your body gives out. And then when that's over, then you choose another body and you start over again. Hence infinite game. So trying to complete the game the soonest way possible is pointless, because that's not what you're here for. You're here to help humanity. And the key to helping humanity is by being the realest version of you that you can be in real time. What does that mean? It means that you can't escape reality by hiding in the ball of light. And you're not supposed to. You're supposed to become the ball of light in form if you can. And that's the goal, right? Like, I don't know if it's possible, but we're doing it. We're trying. We're doing our best, right? This is little tiny pieces here and there, and then we create our own ball of light within us, and that's embodiment. So I think that the key is really just, are we doing what we're supposed to do? And if we're not, do we want to? If you don't want to, that's okay too, right? There's opportunities for that thing to come back infinite times. So just keep doing it. And eventually you're just going to get tired of seeing the thing and be like, I guess this is mine since nobody else has solved it. And it's been 10 years. So just deal with it. And then you let go. And then all of a sudden, like, everything you've been waiting for just shows up. And you're like, really? 10 years ago, I could have done that thing. What was I thinking? And then that's okay. You can go through that, just forgive yourself and move on. Because the stream is infinite. All ideas come back around. And there is no reason to be in fear of missing out at all. If you missed this opportunity to ascend for whatever reason, there's another one infinitely. It doesn't matter. Do what's in front of you. As long as you do that, you're going to arrive exactly where you need to be, and your life's going to be awesome. It might start out being not so awesome because you have things to clean up, right? Like I said, the densest things first. But once you work through that, it really is like a light stream. It's pretty amazing.
So we might as well have some fun while we're doing it.
Yeah, dance parties. Learning to dance is one of the most valuable things you'll ever do. And I don't mean dancing in the physical. I mean like the non-physical, physical dance. Like, I think dancing in the physical is also really good, but I'm just saying, like, the non-physical dance is really amazing because when you're moving, you're moving and you're echoing back and forth, and you're creating ripples which allow you to see clear. I think of it like a fog that's around you. Like if you move your hand, the fog dissipates, clarity comes through for just a second, then comes back in. Well, that's what you're dancing with your divinity. The fog is your divinity, and it's integrating into you as you're moving. So.
Absolutely. And I am a huge proponent of dancing it physically into being. And I think for myself, one of the most helpful practices is, especially when I'm feeling a little bit off, or even when I'm feeling fantastic, to level it up, is to like take everything that's those ideas, those dreams, my divinity, and literally like move my body and pull it into me and practice that to bring it into my physicality. And then we get to do both at once. And it just feels like it stabilizes me. And it's the most magical tool that I personally know right now.
I love that you made sure to clarify that that was your favorite tool, and that it was your personal tool, and all the other stuff, so that people wouldn't go, oh, that's the tool. And then you see like the whole world just dancing around when you walk outside. You're like, wait, what just happened? So yeah, thank you for not creating clones of yourself. I appreciate that.
No, but I am inviting everyone to the dance party. If you want to dance with me, that's amazing. And a whole world dancing together, no matter what it looks like, that would be amazing, because people get freaked out by the word dance. So sometimes I won't even talk about dance. I won't tell people that we're going to dance, but we'll talk about movement, because movement's not as triggering, right? I think movement is important. And even going like this, like moving energy around, moving it towards you, moving it out of you, that is a dance. You just might not be thinking of it as such. So, but yes, it's my favorite tool, and other people can come to the dance party if they feel like playing.
Yeah, absolutely. Amazing. Amazing. So yeah, I think life is really just what's in front of you. And if you just handle that, I've said this like 4 times in this video, but if you just handle that, your life really is pretty awesome. So, you know, that's my favorite tool. I love your favorite tool as well, because it's kind of the same. Like yours is like dancing it as you feel called to. Mine's just the same thing. It's just like looking at what's in front of you and then moving it as you feel called to. So it's a form of movement. Yeah, the magic of life.
Right. Well, for me, I would just say like dancing with what's right in front of you energetically, really, and playing with it in that way. But I mean, you can do it. Everybody can take it and make it their own, and that's what's going to move them forward.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
I love that. I love this entire conversation. We've been talking for quite some time. There have been hearts flying up on the screen, lots of beautiful reactions. So people have really been resonating with it. And I think you've dropped a whole lot of wisdom bombs and things for people to take and try on and integrate for their embodiment and for their conscious creation process.
Awesome. Yeah, I was really grateful to have this opportunity to just share. You know, it's been a very powerful last 2 years for me. So many realizations, and it was cool to be able to openly just say, hey, here's everything I've learned. Take what makes sense for you, what's in front of you to work with, and just apply it if you want to. Like, for anyone out there that doesn't know, like, my job is just to provide choices. It's not to make those choices for you. Like, I don't want to make those choices. My job, here's the things I've learned. Do what you want with them. Go out into the world and live your life as best you can. Like, that's all we can ever ask of anyone, all we can ever do for ourselves. And this time that we're in is a time where we're going to be challenged in that. Can we live the best life possible in the world without caring what the world has to say about our life in that sense? And I think that that's going to be a really fun experiment for humanity to go through these next few weeks, is can we stay us when the world around us does the things it's going to do?
If you had to give anyone then a piece of wisdom of something that's carried you through in a time where it was difficult to be you.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is always what's in front of you. Like, it goes back to that one practice, because if, like, let's say that I have an experience where something that I want to have happen doesn't happen. A great example, the hurricane delayed the table by another week. Really wanted that table to be out in the world. Really wanted that table to be out in the world. Wasn't time. So hurricane happened, delayed the table for 1 week. So there was a part of me that was like, why am I attached to this table getting out into the world right now? Like, what is the issue? Like, why is this the thing? And then I realized, well, The reason is because I want the world to be a better place. Okay, well, is it my right to make the world a better place? No, it's my right to create choices for the world to be a better place. It's not my right to make the world a better place. It's right to make my world a better place, right? But not the world. And that's the struggle that I constantly come up against is, why am I wanting to change the world? Because I can't accept it. Well, if I can't accept the world, then I don't have the right to change it. So how do I accept the world and what it goes through? And then the funny thing was, like, because of the hurricane, I thought it destroyed the tables. I literally thought it did. But because the titanium sheets didn't arrive on time, they decided to take everything off the floor, put them in storage. So when the hurricane hit, it didn't flood that area. So like all the perfect pieces, right? Like all the things that needed to happen happened the way they needed to happen. I was just in my control, thinking that it needed to happen sooner and that this needed to happen and this happened. And I was just like, okay, this is the way that I look at the world sometimes. It's like, I want to change the world. It's not my job to change the world. It's my job to change me. And by doing so, I create choices in the world that can change the world. But again, it's the world's choice to change the world, because the world is us. Like, it's not just me, it's everyone around me working together to move the world forward. I can't do that alone. That's not my role. It's not my place here, right? This is a world with free will, which means that what I do creates impact and change for others. And if enough people choose that one thing, then yeah, we can change the world. That's true. But it's we that change the world, not me. And that's been my greatest thing, is like, the world's burning around me, then we chose that. So the thing that's in front of me in the world burning around me, what am I going to do with that? Because that's me choosing to do that thing. And then others can see that they can do a thing and they can make their choice. And then we might have the world stop burning. I don't know. I'm not in charge of it. My job is to do the best I can with me. And what I've learned is that that really does create a lot of freedom. And at the same time creates a deeper level of responsibility with you and the things that you're responsible for. One of the things that my masseuse always says all the time is like, that's great, Jason, I love that, but it doesn't change the fact that I have a mortgage due on the 30th. And I'm like, I love your approach to life, because all of these concepts and all these ideas are great, but they don't change anything that is our responsibility until we apply them and begin to see things differently. And then things change. So it's important to understand, like, you have responsibilities, honor those. And if the world is burning around you and you still have the responsibility to take your kid to daycare, then take your kid to daycare. Like, it doesn't matter if the world's burning around you. Yeah, when you have time and you've taken your kid to daycare and you have that space between, you can think about the world burning around you and you can send love and you can do whatever you want, right? But like, honor your responsibilities. And then with the free time, you can look at ways to solve the things that are going on in the world until the universe puts something in front of you again. That's the way I live my life. And I think that that's probably the easiest way. Not saying again that it's the right way, but that's the easiest way for me to live my life and to not get lost in the illusion of the world, is what can I do right now? Because I can't change that a hurricane is happening in this area. I mean, I probably could if I wanted to really change things, but I would be an idiot, because then the pressure difference would move somewhere else and then probably lots of people would die. Or I can just not get my way. Okay, I'm just not going to get my way, because if it was my true way, it would happen. And that's the magic of it. Like, it renewed my faith to know that none of the tables were destroyed, because they could have been. That was a really bad hurricane. A lot of things happened to a lot of people that I know. That process of accepting is the key for me.
And what I love is that I'm hearing basically you taking full personal responsibility for your world and allowing people, having the spiritual maturity to not try to disempower people and change them, right? Just accepting and allowing that. And then the thing is, you're holding that in your field, right? And that allows people to choose into and feel it if they want to take the codes from that. And then it gives them permission to do it as well, right? Especially since you willingly share your mistakes. So again, people could take that information if they wanted to, and they could maybe learn from them, or they could choose not to and make the same mistakes themselves if that was in front of them to do.
Yep, exactly.
Just being that example.
If the world was burning around you, how would you handle it? What is something that you can share with everybody here that is your process to like handling the world burning around you? Like everything that you thought was going to happen, all the things, everything just disappearing. What would you do?
It's exactly what I said before. It's tuning into my heart and saying, what is the most loving thing I can do for myself in this moment right here? Because that drops me into the clarity that I need to take care of me first. And then if I'm still unclear, go, okay, now what is, after I have that drink of water, now what is the most loving thing for me to do now? What is the next most loving thing? And then actually doing it, not hearing the messages, not hearing my heart and going, oh, that's cool, and doing something else, but actually taking that aligned action that I'm guided to do. And honestly, if I don't know what to do, if I just keep doing that, then I will get exactly where I need to be.
Very well said. Very well said. I 100% agree. And that's the magic of the world. It's that simple, guys. Like, I know that you've listened to us for like, I don't know how long it's been now, but like an hour and a half, probably somewhere around there. And it all comes back to that same thing. Different words, different ways of doing it, same concept. And you'll find that that's the same concept with everyone, different ways, different approaches to get to that concept, right? And there's nothing wrong with the approaches. The main thing is, are you doing what's for you in front of you? If yes, then cool. If not, then maybe look into doing that if you want to, obviously.
Yeah. Absolutely. And please, please, please just hear us when we're saying that if you do that, there are brighter, shinier days ahead. It's just going to be a bit of a bumpy ride to get there. So I think people need to remember where we're going. There's this thing that happens, especially in, for example, childbirth. I did train as a doula, and I've had a child where almost at the end, right before the baby is born, people are so in it that they forget that there is a baby on the way. They forget what they're doing. They can't even see what is happening in front of them because they're so immersed in the experience. And then you can remind a woman, like, you know, that you're having a baby, and they'll go, oh yeah, right. And because when we're in that vision, or we don't see beyond. So there is something coming. We are birthing this whole new world.
Yeah. Wow. I did not know that. And that is fascinating and makes total sense at the same time. So that's a perfect example. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, it is real. Things are getting real, and they are intense, and it's for a purpose.
Exactly.
Right? So doing what's right in front of you and tuning inwards, if that's what you are needing to do. And then when you have the stability and the wherewithal and the ability to go out and do what it is that you need to do, then do that. But it's going to be, I feel like, a process of almost like flipping in and out over the next little bit to manage, basically, to ride the waves.
Exactly. Yeah. Learn to ride the waves in your own way, for sure.
Yeah. Feels like that's been the last 2 years, right? Roller coaster and the waves, the wave pool, the ocean. It's been interesting, but I love hearing your voice and just remembering that I'm not the only person that can feel that we are headed somewhere that is so beautiful, and it's what we've been waiting for. But we're making it. We're co-creating it.
Yeah, and that's what makes it so cool. Is like it's what we've been waiting for, but it's also what we've created. So there's like an essence of earning this. Like, it's something, when you earn something, you don't lose it again, right? So like, we're earning our ascension into the next dimension, and then we're going to be continuing to ascend, right? So like ascending, but like, we earned it, and this is us earning it. This is the in part of it. And I love the childbirth perspective, because it is, we are birthing a new world. And I think a lot of people have forgot that. I often hear like, how is it so bad in the world? And I'm like, you have no idea what it could have been. I've seen the visions of what it could have been, and they are nightmarish. So we actually, this is the best worst option. The one that we have right now is the best worst option, and there wasn't any better options. So understand that this is the end. Like, this is the last part of it, where we like have the child, maybe even crowning at this point would be a good example. Like, we're starting to see a little bit, just a bit more, but we still have a lot more ahead of us. And even though it's a short bit, it's a lot in that small amount of time. And I've never been a doula or anything like that, but I'm assuming that childbirth is a lot like that, right? Like, is the last part the hardest part, or is it like leading up to?
Yeah, there's a part called transition that is considered the hardest part, and it does go right up towards the end. And that part where you're crowning is called the Ring of Fire, because it's very intense.
Yeah, I would assume that would be ridiculously intense. I can't, like, as a man in this body currently, I can't even fathom it. and you actually experienced it. So, see, that's the difference between wisdom. I'm not going to speak on something I have no clue about, but I can understand it from that perspective. Like, okay, yeah, that would make sense. All of the energy centers in that one location being activated in that intensity. Wow, I can see why you would forget things. Your brain, literally, the electricity, you'd probably not be able to keep track. So, and I think that's where we are too. That's what the fog of war is right now. Is like people are seeing it, they don't know what they can't see. The smoke grenade went off, right? So like they don't know what's on the other side, and we're on almost to the other side. Originally, if reality hadn't broken and things hadn't been repaired and changed and altered, this smoke grenade would have gone off in November and the world would have lost. It would have been just what needed to happen to take us off of our track. And that's why it didn't happen, because we're not allowed to go off track. A small group of people can't decide what happens to the rest of us. So don't worry about it. Continue to go forward, handle what's in front of you, and know that this is, the end of a very long journey, 9,000 years. So talk about a birth process. It's been a bit. And then those 9,000 years actually condensed into billions because of the different timelines and the way that they played out. So we have like billions of years of karma related to 9,000 years of time. And that's enough to make you go like that, right? But just understand that this is the best that we could do to clean it up, and the fastest, and that we're almost done. So hang in there, enjoy the ride as best you can, and just keep having faith, because like if you actually take the time to look at what's really happening, you can see the major moments that are happening. Like the cracks in the illusion are happening, and they're very obvious. And the thing about the illusion cracking is once the first glimmer of light shines through all the way, the entire thing will come crumbling down. And that's why they had to use a smoke grenade to like cover up the fact that there were cracks happening. But it doesn't matter, because you can't stop the inevitable. Truth will always come through in the end.
That's such a beautiful, beautiful image of the smoke clearing and the light already shining through.
Yeah.
That's
the 21st, the day that you start your event. So that's it's gonna be awesome. The day that we have our event, the day you have your event, cosmic dance party of celebration. It's gonna be a great time.
It is. So we're going to navigate the time in between together. And I'm so grateful that you could help me set up that energy, because I feel like now the container is already being created for the Soul Embodiment Summit. For people that are interested in attending that, I'm going to put the link into the show notes, and I'll put it into Facebook here. I'm going to have 15 other really beautiful conscious creators sharing workshops and speaking, doing presentations. We'll have an equinox ceremony. And these are all beings that are supporting people in taking their soul, galactic, cosmic magic, and bringing it down to earth and making it something that we can embody. And their wisdom will be shared just like this, or in some cool experiential practices. So that's going to be we'll do the opening ceremony now on September 20th to the 24th. And it's the Soul Embodiment Summit. So I'll put that in everything. And you've got so many amazing things coming out. And I know there are some people watching that this might be their first time meeting you. So did you want to share anything that you'd like to direct people to if they want to check things out?
I mean, our YouTube channel has a lot of videos. So MTVO Team, that's like our YouTube channel. And I think a lot of other social media accounts there as well. I'm not really good at promoting myself. It's not one of my things. But one of the biggest things that I will promote is the Crystallized Roots movement. Getting involved with that is really helpful, like whether it's praying and blessing trees, whether it's donating time or money, or really just like helping to get the word out there. But planting 1 million trees with source seeds so that we can, that's a source seed. And they're like 8-dimensional technology. They're pretty awesome. But planting these trees so that we can help to recalibrate the earth and to raise it up to the next level in an introduction versus force way. So like we're actually introducing opportunities to the trees to evolve faster, because we're evolving faster and the world's evolving faster. And the energy that's coming through is creating room for that. And so one of my major missions in this life is to plant these trees and to help get this all started. And also just like reforestation in itself is huge. Because like, as I said, like the little joke from Tom McDonald is like, if trees created Wi-Fi, we'd plant them, right? But like they don't. And so they do create Wi-Fi for our spirit, which is a really fascinating concept as well, if you think about it. But that's one of the reasons why we don't plant trees. So planting trees is really helpful. We can breathe better, our soul comes online easier. It's pretty awesome. So if you want to help plant trees, please feel free to like check out earthchange.org and go to the Crystallized Roots movement and learn about that. The table will be out hopefully next week, the week after. I'm hoping it comes out. Again, I'm just kind of surrendered, but I'll be posting about that on my wall when that's time. Void Space has a really cool promo right now where we're giving 1 gram of silence with every order of $100 or more. What else am I doing? So many companies, so many things. I don't even know anymore. Yeah. So otherwise, just message pr@jasondestes.com and talk with my PR rep. They will give you all the things that I'm doing that I can't think of at this moment because, yeah.
That's awesome. I'm so glad you brought up the Crystallized Roots movement, because that is one of the things, the reasons I wanted to bring you on was to make people aware of it existing. And if you don't want to promote yourself that much, that's okay. I am happy to share and talk about it. And I'll be sharing more about that in the Soul Embodiment Summit, because planting trees is not right in front of me right now, but I am so grateful that other people are doing it and doing it with extra style, like the source seeds. So I am donating some proceeds, 8% of the proceeds, to my next Conscious Creation certification program, to the Crystallized Roots movement, because I think it's honestly one of the most amazing and important things we could be doing right now to shift the world to that place that we want to see it.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think that, and on top of that, it creates opportunities for people to plant trees together, which is one of the most healing and magical things. I'm going to be traveling the world these next 3 years to plant trees. That's how important it is for me to do this, is that I've dedicated 3 years of my life to do it. Like, that's a big deal. Like, I have so many companies, so many things that I'm doing, but like, this is more in front of me than anything else. And so to me, this is one of the most important things. And donating time and money and doing prayers, is any of those are possible. Like, if you don't have money or time, then you have the ability to do a prayer, right? So we wanted to make it available to everyone that wanted to be part of it. So there's no reason that anyone can't be part of it anymore. And I think that that's very important when it comes to a mission like this, because replanting and building 8-dimensional forests and things like that, like, that's something that everyone who wants to be part of should be able to be. And because of the restrictions of the world and the way that we live currently, it wasn't. And so that's why that praying aspect comes in. And we've had some pretty cool people pray for the trees and things. It's been really fun to read some of the prayers that people type up and things. So I'm loving it. I think we're at like 20,000 trees now that we've planted. And it's been a weird since it launched. Like, the world kind of did its thing. So the fact that we got that many trees planted with the world as it is, I'm very impressed. I think that these next few years are going to go much faster. We'll plant tons of them. Like I said, I'm going to be in Costa Rica and we're going to plant 10,000 trees, I think, in 10 days. So 1,000 trees a day, which is going to be really awesome. And Reagan's going to help with that. So that'll be really fun. There's going to be events all over the world where I'll just be there to plant trees and to teach some classes and hang out and stuff. It's going to be really fun.
It's so exciting. And I was at my bank the other day and I saw a big advertisement that they're planting 100 million trees.
Wow. Which bank is this?
The Bank of Montreal. So I'm in Canada.
Okay. Yeah.
And I know of lots of other projects that have these goals as well. So it's happening.
Yeah, the collective knows that they have to plant trees. Like, they know it. And I'm grateful that this is happening. I mean, okay, so last fun story, because then I do have to go because it's 5 now. But so I started playing a video game called Ragnarok, right? And the video game was designed to really help me to heal the castle problem, like the sandcastle thing. Because what happens is you come as a god, but because you come as a god to Earth, you don't get anything. So you start out pretty much naked with no tools, nothing, and you have to run around and find things and rebuild them and everything, right? So at the end of the game, when the game ends, you start over again, because you go back up to the heavens and then you have to come back and start over. So it's like 3 hours of your time that all you get is the experience of learning to play. And the world's the same. So you get to learn like how things work, and you get to that part, but that's skill. You don't get to keep anything else. Like, all your crafts, everything else is gone. What's really cool about this game is after I started playing it, they launched a new campaign in the game where for every giant that you kill in the video game, they plant a real tree in the world.
That's awesome.
I know. So I was like, well, I'm going to play this game a lot. And every hour, one giant's killed in the video game. Well, actually, I think it's like every 10 minutes, one giant's killed in the video game. Can't remember anymore. I timed it because I was curious. But there was like 9,000 people playing it every hour on average. And I was just like, this is amazing. We're planting hundreds of trees all over the world constantly, because they teamed up with the One Tree Planted nonprofit, and something that we're actually looking at teaming up with as well to like help out with CRM so that we can get more trees out in the world. Because I mean, we're getting the funds now, but we don't have necessarily the support to get the trees planted, nor the know-how, like I said, and so if we can be teamwork and team play, then that's even better. So I'm very excited for what the future holds. And those initiatives, like you said, I mean, they're all over. People really understand how important it is to rebuild the forest, especially after the fires. So it's cool to see that we're all coming together with the same shared goal, which is take care of the earth. Come back to like what humanity came here for in the first place, which was to be a good steward of the earth. I mean, we forgot because we got distracted by technology, but like the earth, man, like plant trees, like touch the dirt, connect, change the world by changing the forest, bringing back the spiritual Wi-Fi, right? Like coming back online to ourselves. And so, yeah, I'm very passionate about this. And the fact that the source seeds help the trees to grow faster and all the things that they do with the weather patterning and things, it's just like, it's perfect, So a huge fan.
Me too. And it's so important for all of us to remember that we are nature, right? It's not separate from us. And so going on this journey of discovery back towards integrating ourselves into nature and into that collective, I think will support us in coming into that unity as well.
Yeah, and the new Avatar movie is coming out pretty soon, I think, as well. So like that, if you haven't seen Avatar 1, anyone out there, even though it's an older film, it's worth watching. It's like one of those life-changing films that really help you to understand how important it is. So yeah, huge fan of the things that are going on in the world. It's amazing that I didn't know about that with Montreal. Now that I do, might be able to help them too. We'll see how it all comes together. But yeah, there's a 1 billion trees initiative as well that's trying to plant 1 billion trees by the end of their life. And I mean, it's amazing all the people that have reached out and asked to like be part of the mission and to help support the mission. And I'm just so grateful that we're not alone in that. Because, like I said, just throw it behind you. And eventually the whole collective is like, okay, wait, we got to plant trees. So here we go.
Exactly. And we don't have to do it alone. We can work together with it. And this is the things we're not seeing in the media right now. We're not seeing the actual amazing things that are happening. So it's so great to be able to speak into it, have hundreds of people witness it. And thank you everyone that has been with us for this amazing conversation today. Jason, I'm so grateful that you could come and share this time and just hold that example in your field of what it looks like to consciously create that change that you want to see in the world. It's so inspiring. I love you so much. Thank you for everything that you are doing to inspire us all.
Oh, thank you so much for that. That's like, wow. Yeah. And also thank you. Like you're doing the events, you're helping to hold things together, you're helping individuals. Like you have a lot of great things going on as well. So thank you so much for being part of the change as well. Like I recognize that's one of the reasons why I was excited to do this. And I made it work, even though it was going to be, you wanted to the time I couldn't make work, but at least we made it work. And that's what the magic is, right? And it actually fell at the perfect time because the smoke grenade and the things that are happening just started a few days ago. Like we're finally in clarity now, starting to see things differently. So thank you again for everything and for holding this wonderful space. And congratulations on your event and our 1-year anniversary and all of the fun things that will happen at it. I look forward to hearing more about it and witnessing some of it when I get back from my event.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I know you have to go, so I'll honor your time. It's been absolutely amazing. Thank you, everyone. And if you're watching this on YouTube, I'll put all the links in the show notes, and on Facebook, I'll throw them into the comments on the replay here. So
thank you very much.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.